Okay, Julia, since you're new to the cohort and you claim to be a greenhorn, and I'm questioning that sometimes, by the way, because I look at your images, and the images you posted so far really look good. So maybe you're sandbagging me here, but anyway, assuming you really are a greenhorn and you have some curiosity that maybe I can help to satisfy, then I decided to record this tutorial for you. I noticed that you watched Rob's critique session with Gina yesterday, and in that you said, what is this constant reference about noise and how does one quiet it? And can someone point out the noise in the pictures I submitted so that I can begin to see it in my work? And so I did that. I went to your images. Let me come down here to the images that you posted. Where are they? There they are. And let me click on that and go in and take a look at your images. And I went through these and quickly took a look, and I didn't see any digital noise. And glancing at these, I'll tell you about what digital noise is in a minute. Till I got to this one right here, and in this one I can the snowy egret or great egret, I'm not sure which it is. I believe it's a snowy egret. BJ identified it as a snowy egret. There appears to be some digital noise in here. What digital noise is, it's sort of like the old film grain back in the film days when you would use a higher ISO film. It would produce some grain in it. And digital noise is similar in that respect. It usually shows up in shadows. Generally when you lighten shadowed areas, you really are going to see some noise. It's usually a function of your camera settings, and let's take a look at your camera settings over here. Let me look under photo details. You shot this with a Digital Rebel TI, and I've noticed that you shot it at ISO 250. Generally a low ISO number like that doesn't produce a lot of noise. Generally you're at 400 or 800 before you start to see noise, although some cameras, and maybe the Rebel is like that even as low as 250 you see some noise, particularly in low light or in shadowed areas. And looking at this the snowy egret here, I can see some noise, certainly in this area, in the shadowed area under its wing and along under its belly here and under the neck. What I'm going to do, I'm going to download this image and then pull it into Photoshop and take a look at it. And one question you have asked also is what type of photo editing should a greenhorn use? What type of software? You know, I'm not a salesman for Adobe, so when I say this, I'm going to come across sounding like I am a salesman for Adobe. But the gold standard in photo editing these days is Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Lightroom. And for $10 a month in the Creative Cloud with the photographer's option, or whatever they call it, the photographer's package, for $10 a month you get Photoshop, Bridge, Camera Raw, and Lightroom. You get them all. And Lightroom is probably the program that you should use. And the reason I say that is most photographers use Lightroom. Now, I happen not to use it because I grew up on Bridge and Photoshop and Camera Raw, which all basically do the same thing as Lightroom. And so I am comfortable with that workflow, so I stay with Bridge and Camera Raw. But the controls that are in Bridge and Camera Raw are very similar to what's in Lightroom, but Lightroom is a little more modern and geared toward photographers' use. So I'm going to recommend Lightroom. And hopefully the check from Adobe will arrive in my mailbox any day, since I just endorsed them, but we'll see. So I'm going to download this image and take care of that here so we can take a look at it. So I'm going to go up here where it says more. I'm going to click on that and go download photo. And now your photo has been downloaded into my computer here. So I'm going to close. Well, actually, I'll leave it open for a minute. Let's just go down here to Photoshop. The little PS, I have Photoshop booted up on my computer. And from Photoshop, I'm going to hit File, Open. And this takes me into my download folder where I have several images and so forth. And there's your image right there, image 1468. I'm going to highlight that, click Open. And now your image is open in Photoshop. Now I'm going to take this image into Adobe Camera Raw. Now, typically, Camera Raw is used for processing of raw files, and if you're not shooting RAW, you should be. You can also, though, take a file type like a TIFF or a JPEG and take it into the Camera Raw filter in Photoshop and do some of the same things that you can do with a raw file. The difference is a raw file has a lot more data, a lot more information, and hasn't been compressed. It's the uncompressed capture data right out of the camera sensor, and so you have a lot more flexibility, a lot more data to work with. But even with a JPEG image like this, we can do some things in Camera Raw that would be similar to processing a raw file, and we can make some adjustments. So I'm going to take this into Camera Raw by going up here and see where it says Filter, clicking on that, and then coming down to where it says Camera Raw Filter. And by the way, Julia, I don't expect you to be taking notes and try to learn all this. So really what I want to do here is a demonstration to let you see what can be done, what the possibilities are, and hopefully encourage you to take up the editing techniques that I'm demonstrating here and learning how to do all that. There's some great tutorials on all this online, so there's any number of ways of learning this. I've learned it by typical of a man. I don't read instructions. I like to learn by doing. So I've been clicking and clicking and clicking and learning these things, but I do watch some tutorials here and there, and quite frankly, they really help a lot to see somebody that knows what they're doing. Anyway, there's the Camera Raw filter. I'm going to click on that. And by the way, I'm going to tell you, this is a really excellent image. Again, I think maybe you're sandbagging us by saying you don't know what you're doing. This is a beautiful image. You've done very, very well with it. If we go back over to where you have it posted on in the cohort here, I notice that BJ has made the statement here that it's a beautiful snowy egret, and that she has commented that it is too close to the right side of the frame, which it really is. A moving animal or object, a car, bicycle, motorcycle, birds, animals, anything that's moving in a photograph, you should have room for that object to move, some breathing room over here. So we're going to add some of that here in a few minutes. But let's go back over to Photoshop here. I just wanted to show you BJ's comment there that she made. I agree with BJ on that, by the way. So let me show you what digital noise is. This one has a little bit of noise, but not a lot. I'm going to use a magnifying tool, and I'm going to magnify into this little area right here. And you see all this splotchy looking stuff in the background. Some of that is digital noise. Some of it is what's called JPEG artifacts. When a raw file is converted to a JPEG, that is a compression algorithm that takes the image data and compresses it so that the file is not so large. And when it does that, it creates some artifacts also that look similar to digital noise. So we're seeing a little bit of digital noise, a little bit of JPEG artifacts, but they're very similar in how they appear and also how you remove them. So let's just pretend that this is totally digital noise, and I'll show you what to do. In Adobe Camera Raw, I have a little menu here that's called Detail. I'm going to click on that up on the right here, and it brings up my noise and sharpening menu. In Lightroom, it's a different entry, and again, I don't use Lightroom, so maybe somebody that uses Lightroom could give you more information on that if you decide to use Lightroom as your primary editing program. It's really a great organizer and editing program. I can't say it enough. I probably should have switched to Lightroom years ago when it came out, but I didn't do it, and now maybe I'm too old to learn new tricks. I really like the method I use with Bridge and Photoshop. Anyway, in Adobe Camera Raw, in this little window that popped up on top here is Adobe Camera Raw that is on top of Photoshop at the moment. And in those over here says here, Camera Raw, and there's the image file name. And now that I'm in this detail format, this detail menu over here, there's a little section that says noise reduction, and what this is called is luminance noise. And if I take the luminance noise slider and move it to the right, you see that all smooths out and goes away, or mostly goes away. So it really takes care of smoothing that area out. To let you see it again, let me bring it back down to 0. You see all this splotchy looking stuff, and now move it over to the right, and it pretty much goes away. That's luminous noise reduction. Now let me show you another type of noise that's called color noise. You see a slider down here that says color. So I'm going to take the little hand tool right here that allows me to move the image around, and I'm going to move down into this area. Now let me show you what color noise is. Color noise is what they call it, Christmas tree light type noise. If you look in this little area right in here, you see some green, some blue, some pink looking colors, several different colors in this area. That's color noise. Color noise is addressed with this slider right here, and it really doesn't take a lot. You just move this this slider up to like about 20 or 25, and you notice all of that little Christmas tree light sort of color went away. Let me show you that here by pulling it back down to 0. Now you see all the little different colors, the greens and pinks and blues, and then take that color slider, move it up, and that goes away. So now we've addressed luminous noise and color noise. Now you got a couple of other issues in here. Let me use that little hand tool and move over here. You also have something that's called chromatic aberration, and you probably haven't even heard that term yet. Chromatic aberration, or CA as we call it, abbreviate it, is a function of how the light travels through a lens in a camera, and different wavelengths of light, the blue, the green, and the red, bend at different angles as they go through a prism. You've seen the display of light being broken into the three basic colors as it goes through a prism, and they hit the sensor at different locations. And in high contrast areas, particularly around the edge of images, you will get an odd color like this. Blue and green are most commonly seen along the edges of high contrast areas, like the difference between this bird's head and the background. So we're seeing this blue line along the edge here, and you see a blue line here. That is chromatic aberration. There's a way to remove that too in either Camera Raw or Lightroom. And you go to this, in Camera Raw, we go up to this menu up here that says Lens Corrections, and click on that. And you notice it brings up a little box here that says Remove Chromatic Aberration. So I'm going to click on that. And nothing happened at this point because I haven't raised the value of these sliders over here. But whether you have purple or blue type edging or green edging, depends on which one of these sliders you move. Sometimes you have both, and actually we do have a little bit of both. There's a little bit of green along this edge, but it's mostly blue. So I'm going to take the purple slider and move it up, and you start to see that blue edge disappear a bit. Didn't disappear much, but it dropped down a little bit. It's not as intense. And that's because the color is not quite matched up here. If you notice, there's a color slider that says purple hue, and we're going to try to match that color that we're trying to remove, and it's actually a little more toward the blue side. So by moving that slider down, now that has pretty much gone away. Let's see if we can see it here. No, we can't do it with that. So let me reduce the purple amount slider down to 0. Now you see that blue edge come back in there. Let me raise that purple amount back up, and now it goes away. So we pretty much eliminated the chromatic aberration also. There is just a little touch of green. Let's see if we affect that by erasing the green here. No, I don't think it had a lot of effect. There's not much green chromatic aberration. It's almost all blue or purple color chromatic aberration, and that is the most common color that you'll see in chromatic aberration. People call it the purple fringing. If you hear people mention purple fringing, that's what they're talking about, is the chromatic aberration. Okay, I'm going to right click and hit Fit in View and bring this back to put the entire bird back on the page. One other issue that I see, and I mentioned earlier, is color. This is a snowy egret, and they're white, and unfortunately in this photograph it looks blue, so that's a color issue, and that could have been the setting on your camera, whether your white balance was set on auto and it read the color incorrectly, or if you were set for shade and it was in sun, whatever may have happened to cause this discoloration. But our white snowy egret is blue in this case, so we're gonna turn him white by doing this. Right up here in Camera Raw is a tool called the white balance tool. That little eyedropper. When I click on that, I have this little eyedropper that I'm dragging across the image, and I'm going to look for a spot on this image that should be white, and I'm going to tell Camera Raw this should be white, and we know that his wing right here should be white. So when I click on this, Camera Raw is going to turn that area white and make all the global color adjustments to the entire image to bring it into the correct color cast. So I'm going to click on that right there, and if you notice, our snowy egret now became white instead of blue. So that looks a lot better. That's a lot more realistic to what it should be. Now, in some respects, when something is in shade, whether it's the shady side of a tree in snow, or even this snowy egret, and maybe he was totally in the shade when you took this photograph, there may be a little bit of blue in there, and so this may have been an overcorrection. But actually, it looks good to my eye. I'm pretty happy with that. That's the color that the bird should be. Now I see these other issues up under the wing and along the belly here, where there's an odd green color that I don't care for. And I'm not going to try to correct for that in Adobe Camera Raw, although I could by going up here to this little thing called the adjustment brush, and this is also in Lightroom, by the way. And I could pick up this adjustment brush and I could start making some adjustments in this area. But I find this is something that works better in Photoshop. I'm just a little more comfortable doing this type of adjustment in Photoshop instead of in Adobe Camera Raw. So I'm going to click OK and bring this image into Photoshop now, and we'll do some more work over in there. Not that you couldn't do this in Lightroom, you certainly could. So anyway, there are those corrections I just made applied to your image. If I hit Control Z, it goes back to the original image as you presented it, and then I hit Control Z again and it brings it back and shows the adjustments that I did. Looking a lot better. So let's do a couple of things. Before I add some space over here to the right of the bird's beak, though, I'm going to take care of this color issue in here. So let's use a magnifying tool and come in here and take a look at this area. As you see, it is quite green in this area, and I'm pretty sure that green is not a correct color for this bird under the wing there. So now I'm going to go back out a little bit by hitting Control and minus, and that zooms me out a little bit. And I'm going to select this area, so that whatever color adjustments I make are only to this area, not to the rest of the image. Now, let me right click and fit this on the screen here just to show you. There is no other green around this image anywhere. I could probably do this adjustment globally to the entire image and not do any damage. But typically when I do color adjustments to one area, I like to isolate that area when I make the adjustments, just so I don't make the adjustment somewhere else. Now, like if there were a green bush or a green tree over here, if I reduced this green over here to the entire image they were reduced, it would also change the green in the tree. So we wouldn't want to do that. But anyway, I'm going to click on this tool right up here called the Quick Selection tool. This allows me to come over here and I'm going to select this area that I want to make the color adjustments to. Now, I have not, at this point, it hasn't selected the color around the eye of the bird, and you know, I'm not sure what the color of the tissue around the eye of a snowy egret is. It may actually be green. I'm not sure. I probably should have looked this up before I did this tutorial. But that may be the correct color. I'm going to leave it for right now, just in case it is. We could always remove it later, but right now I'm going to leave it the way it is. This area is not selected, so the adjustments to color that I make actually are in this area and not affecting this area. So what I'm going to do is click on my little layers panel up here, and then go down to the bottom. There's a little icon down here. When I hover over it, it says Create New Fill or Adjustment Layer. I'm going to click on that. It gives me a little pop-up menu that I can pick what type of adjustment layer I'm going to do. And what I'm going to make here is a hue and saturation adjustment layer. Layers are an essential part of Photoshop, by the way. It is just one of those tools that you need to learn how to use if you're going to effectively use Photoshop or almost any other editing program, whether it be Photoshop Elements or in any of the various photo editing programs. Layers is a critical part of it. Anyway, click on Hue and Saturation. We have now created a hue and saturation layer. With this, I'm able to tell it that I want to take this green color and reduce the saturation of it, and maybe even the lightness and darkness. So what I do is go to the little color tab over here where it says Master and click on that, and it brings down a drop-down menu. I'm going to click on Greens. Now when I do that, it gives me these little eyedroppers here, and I'm going to pick up this first one and click on that. Bring it over here and click on this green color, and I'm telling Photoshop this is the color I'm interested in. I just clicked on it with my mouse, and now I'm going to reduce the saturation of that area. You notice the green color goes away when I do that. Let me bring it up so you can see if I increased it, that's what it would look like. I'm going to desaturate that green color, and now that looks pretty good. Let me hit Control and minus so we zoom out just a little bit. That's a lot better than it was. If I bring that saturation back up, you see that's the way it looked. And now I pulled it down and that's pretty much gone. You know what would probably look good? I don't think there are any other colors on this bird in this area other than white and black and shades of gray. So probably I could convert this area to black and white and completely desaturate all color, and it would look even better. So what I'm going to do now that I've just pulled the greens down, and I probably didn't even need to do that, because I could go back up to the master right here. Now I'm affecting all colors in this selected area, and pull the saturation all the way down, and that really has turned that into a monochrome rendition in here. There is no color in this area except black and white and the shades in between, which are gray. I guess black and white, and they have their colors, but I mean, we consider them not to be colors, since one's black, one's white, and then everything in between is gray. And we have not affected the bill of the bird and the eye and the tissue around the eye. We're just going to leave that alone. Probably the eye is yellow, by the way, so maybe there is some discoloration, but I'm going to leave it as it is. So I've desaturated this area and made it totally monochrome in here now. So when we zoom in, it's just all black, white, or gray. There's no color in that area at all. There is a little color along the edge because I didn't select this area right in here, but all this area in here is now taken care of with the color issue. Let me zoom back out. I'm going to right click and say fit on screen, and now we see our bird and the color corrected and looking really good, except now we have that issue that BJ brought up, which is that the bird is too close to the right side of the frame. So we need to add some space over there on the right. If you crop this image from a larger image, you could always go back to your original image and undo the crop and maybe come up with that space. But if this is where the bird was when you took the picture, there's no additional space over there, we're going to have to falsely create that space through Photoshop, and I can do that by using the content aware fill feature in Photoshop. Again, I hope you're not trying to memorize all this and make notes and do all this, because it is fairly advanced what I'm doing here, but I just want to give you an example of the things that you can do so that you can see what the possibilities are, and hopefully get excited about learning these things, because they're really not all that difficult to learn, and you can do so much with it when you do it. So here I'm going to increase the canvas size. In other words, this image is on a canvas, and right now the canvas and the image are the same size, so we don't see the canvas. I'm going to increase the canvas that's under this and make it larger. First thing I'm going to do is change my foreground color from black to white by clicking on these little arrows that you see over here, and now my foreground color is white, so that when I go up to image, click on that, and come down to canvas size and click on that, it's going to allow me to change the size of that canvas that's under this image. Right now it is 2048 pixels wide. That's the distance from here to here. And in fact, if you look up here at these numbers, you see 2000, and it comes out to about 2048 it says right here. So we're going to change it to, like, oh, I don't know, let's make that 2600 pixels. So, and I want all of that additional space to be over here to the right of the bird's beak. So I'm going to hit this little anchor point right here. And what that means is that the additional space that it's going to put on the canvas is all going to be to the right of this image. So when I click on OK, it gave me all this additional space over here to the right. Let me click View and put Fit on Screen, so that we can see what I've added. That's the canvas underneath the image that I have now increased out to that area. Now what I would like to do is let Photoshop fill this area in over here with this background. And it does a really remarkable job. You'll be surprised when you see this. I'm going to go up here to this little square at the top left corner. It's called the rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to click on that and then come over here, and I'm selecting this area and a little bit of the background that I wanted to fill in right there. So I move the selection over to pick up a little bit of that background, so that Photoshop knows that's the area that I want to pick up and duplicate into this area. Then I go up to where it says Edit, pardon me, down to where it says Fill, and click on Edit and Fill. It brings up this little pop-up box that says Content Aware. That means it's going to fill in this area, being aware of the content around it, so that it tries to duplicate it as much as possible. Easier just to click on OK and let you see what it does when I do that. I'm going to click OK. Photoshop will work for just a second, and then it should fill in that area. It didn't do it. Why didn't it do it? Oh, because I did not flatten the layers first. Pardon me. Let me go to Layer, Flatten Image. Okay. Now I'm going to try that again. I'm not going to go into an explanation of why I had to flatten the layer, but let's just go back to it. Anyway, this area is now selected. I'm going to go back up here where it says Edit, fill, and fill in content aware, and click OK. Now you'll see it do the action that I wanted it to do. And Photoshop did a really remarkable job of filling it in that area to look very much like the background that's already behind the bird. So if I go up to select and deselect, so now I've removed that little line that was there. They call it the marching ants, the little selected area. Now you see we have all that extra room over there for the bird. By the way, when Photoshop filled in that area, you might notice down here, let me pick up a pointer so it's easier to see. This area right in here looks a little funny, and that's because it picked up some of the pixels from this area and copied them over here. One of the questions you asked in your posting, Julia, was what is cloning? It sounds like an alien invasion of some sort. Cloning is actually copying pixels from one area of an image and putting them down in another part of the image in order to make some corrections. So let's do that right here so I can demonstrate cloning for you, because that's one area that needs to be cleaned up a little bit. It doesn't look too good. Let me zoom into this area a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. It may be hard to see on your screen. But you can see this little smooch here that doesn't look quite right, and that's because Photoshop picked up these pixels over here in this little streak, whatever it is, and put them down over here when it did the content aware fill. So I want to eliminate that, and the way to do that, to do cloning, is you come up here to this little tool that looks like a rubber stamp. And it is actually called the clone stamp tool. You see the little name for it pop out there. I'm going to click on that. Now what I'm going to do is select pixels as a target that I'm going to copy into this area and cover up this thing. And actually this area here looks about right. So I'm going to go up into this area. I'm using Windows, by the way, so I'm going to hit the Alt key. I'm not sure what the key is on Mac. If you're using a Mac, it's a different one. I forget what it's called. But anyway, I'm going to click on the Alt key on my Windows keyboard, and then the little circle becomes a target. And that's my target there. I'm going to click on that with my mouse. Click. And now that has become the targeted pixels that I'm going to copy, move down into this area. I'm going to click and paint in this area and cover that up. So those pixels up in this area, pardon the beak of the bird that showed up there for a moment, ignore that. The pixels that I picked up in this area, I put down in this area and covered up that little error that Photoshop made there when it did the content aware fill. Let me show you again what cloning is all about. Let's use that bill of the bird there as an example. Again, cloning is copying pixels from one part of an image and laying them down at another. So if I change this again by clicking on the Alt key and changing it to a target, I'm going to target the very bill of the bird here, and I'm going to click right here, click. Those are now my target pixels. I can take those pixels anywhere else on the image and copy them in. So I can come over here, as you see I'm carrying a copy of those pixels up to this area, and I click and I can actually start to paint those pixels into that area. That's cloning. We don't want to do that in this case. We don't need an extra bill of the bird over there, but I just wanted to show you what it is. Okay, let's go up to Edit, Step Backward. And that gets rid of the little bill that I put out there, so it's gone now. Okay, now let's fit this back on the screen. This looks pretty good, except now we have too much space behind the bird. It's wonderful that we have that extra space to the right of the bird's bill, but we need to get rid of some of this area back in here that's unneeded. So I'm going to take this rectangular marquee tool again and click on that, and I'm going to do a new crop for this image that looks about like this. Go to Image, Crop, and get rid of those pixels on the left. So there's our newly edited version. You know, that looks pretty good. I think I'll stop right there. I'm going to show you something here. I'm going to save this image. I'm going to hit File, Save As. Here's my download folder with your original image in there and some other images that I have in my folder at the moment. And I'm going to change the name here from your name, which was IMG 1468. I'm going to put a little tilde up there and put Carl's Edit. And that's the new name for the image. So we now have a new image in there called Carl's Edit. And let me pull up your image. Let's see, let me pull this full screen here. I'm going to hit View, Fit on Screen. Then I'm going to pull up your original image right here. There it is. Set it up a full fit on screen also. So now there's your original image, and there's after I made the corrections. Again, your original image as you presented it to the group, which is a good image, by the way. And there's my edit, which is now a better image, I think. I think we made the corrections necessary to make this into a really, really first-class image. I think, Julia, you have a lot of potential. I've looked at those images that you posted. You're going to do a great job with us, and we're glad to have you in our cohort. And welcome, and I hope this tutorial is useful to you. And if you have any questions, please contact me. I'm going to stop the recording now and post this to YouTube so you can see it. I'll reach down here, click on my little screen recorder, or stop it, and I'll see you back at the cohort. Bye-bye.